Is your business protected against the threat of malicious litigation and frivolous lawsuits? Are you sinking company profits into marketing campaigns that do nothing to contribute to the growth of your business? Bottled Business Sense provides practical business perspectives that uniquely emphasize both legal and media marketing strategies to protect and ensure the longevity of your business. Now, whether you're trying to provide a startup business with some level of stability or an established business with foolproof asset and estate protection, or simply attempting to get a better return for your business marketing dollars, Bill Bernard and Rick Moscoso will expose potential pitfalls to ensure the security and growth of your business, free from unwanted expense and the threat of litigation. You'll learn how to implement marketing and protection tools equal to those used by today's most successful corporations. Let's join Bill and Rick for today's Bottled Business Sense show.
Well, good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday at 10 a.m. I am Rick Moscoso here on the Bottled Business Sense show. Welcome to all our viewers and listeners out there. And if this is the first time on the show, welcome. We have a great episode today. But before we roll into that, I'm actually broadcasting here from the Midwest, the home of Tombstone Pizza here in Medford, Wisconsin. And my co-host Bill Bernard is a gazillion miles away on the other side of the earth in the tropics. So I want to welcome Bill Bernard onto the show. How are you doing today, Bill?
Great, thanks, Rick. Yes, we are quite a ways apart. Just goes to show the dedication that we have towards the Bottle Business Sense show, I guess, and the fact that we keep this thing running even when we're trying to take a little R&R. So, yeah, it's finally a beautiful day here. I'm on the island of Kauai, and we've had some rain and some very humid weather because of a tropical storm, but today it's gorgeous, and who knows, with any luck, I'll get down there and get in the water and avoid the sharks.
There you go. I know last night we had, 2 nights ago, we had a hellacious storm that came through. For our listeners out there who are from the Midwest or listening in from the Midwest, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's one of those where you see the front, there's a quiet before the storm, and then all hell breaks loose and just comes raining down. It was great. We stood out on the deck and watched this thing come as long as we could, and then we quickly ran inside, to take cover. But it was
they could come up fast and furious in the Midwest. I mean, I was born and raised on the East Coast, so I have some familiarity with those wild storms. I can imagine. I hope you're enjoying your time with your family, Rick, and I know I am. So, our show today is going to be a little bit, we're going to keep along the same vein of making sure your business is prosperous, protected. One of the, and that's our phrase, make sure your business is prosperous and protected at all times. On the prosperity side, there are things besides just strict marketing or entity creation or estate planning creation or making sure your employer and employee relationship is good. There's other ways to protect and prosper your business, and one of those I thought that would be interesting to address would be things that I've actually taught about, and that would be dealing with dissatisfied customers or clients. Many times these problems arise, and you'd be surprised how difficult it is sometimes for business owners and entrepreneurs to deal with this situation. I've always said, as an attorney, one of the greatest gifts that you're given is being able to go to law school and learn how to think objectively, remove the emotion from the situation, because obviously your client, whoever that might be, is in an emotional state over a lawsuit generally, and to be able to look at things logically and clearly. And we try to do that in dealing with customer dissatisfaction, because no matter how good your business is or how good you are in what you do, there's always going to be somebody who might be unhappy at some particular time.
Yeah, and that doesn't exclude the solopreneur who quite frequently will deal with unhappy customers out there. So I'm really excited to hear about this, because we all deal with this on a daily basis. You have a very interesting spin on this, and looking forward to see. Hopefully, I'll never have to use any of these these remedies that you're going to share today. But
it's more, Rick, of an interaction, and actually it is good to learn it and know it, because some of it is common sense, but without that emotion in the way, it tends to block your common sense at times. But more importantly, you do want to know how to do it and practice at it, because you are going to face it at some particular time. It's inevitable, and it's better to know how to do it than to just try to wing it, But in actual, and I don't profess to be an expert on this particular subject, although my undergraduate degree is in psychology, for whatever that's worth. I do remember studying this in depth. But I wanted to start off the show by saying there was actually a survey done, and it shows that it said that it is 9 times more difficult to attract a new customer than it is to retain an existing one. So why wouldn't you want to try to retain an existing customer, right? That's the premise, the underlying foundation of this whole thing. And the way you do that, I think, is to start out, and we've touched upon this in other shows, Rick, start out by doing surveys and questionnaires to measure what your customers' perceptions of you are and how you can improve your business acumen and marketing skills. So there's 2 different things. You send out a client questionnaire or a survey, and you want to know what your clients want from you in terms of whatever particular profession you want. And you'll see how this ties in later to everything we're going to talk about. And also from that, you can glean information which will then allow you to pick up from last week's show how to focus your marketing on what your customers want, right? So, for example, I did one, and I think I mentioned this on the show before. My clients said to me that the 2 things they're looking for in an attorney, a personal attorney for their business, is 1, quick turnaround. They don't want to be waiting for months and months to get whatever their assignment is to you done. They want to, and obviously if you're in trial or you have a long engagement or something like that, there are always exceptions. But generally speaking, they want it done rapidly, and they want somebody who's flexible in their fees. Somebody who not only may give them an hourly quote and a flat fee quote on certain projects, but somebody who's able to work with businesses and maybe reduce fees a little bit for the particular business that really wants to come on board with them and have them have you be their lawyer. So once you get those surveys in, now you're armed to both market and conduct your business to your clients in a manner that they deem acceptable, that they want, and that's workable within your overall plan.
Yeah. So Bill, when you're talking about surveys, how is it? What's the process that you use to survey your customers?
I may put, depending on what I'm looking for, I may put together 10 questions, sometimes 5, depending on who I'm sending it out to, because you get a feel for what customers are more willing to do this sort of thing, what clients are more willing to do it than others. But you generally ask certain questions like, for example, what is the first and foremost thing you want from your business attorney? Or what are the 2 most, or what are the 3 most? Rate them in order, okay? What is it that you found in dealing with other lawyers that has caused you some distress? That's a backdoor way to approach it, so you can get maybe a similar answer without focusing on yourself, and maybe get an idea of what their past experiences have been, in addition to what they want from you in particular. So there's different ways to do it, but generally speaking, maybe 5 to 10 questions. I would try to keep it at around 5 questions.
So excuse me for interrupting.
Yeah,
when you do this, Bill, are you doing this anonymously, or is it? No.
No. You're doing this to existing clients who already know about you and know of you, because you want to do 2 things. You want to continually keep in touch with them and let them know you're concerned about their thoughts and feelings. And this survey does that, because you're in effect saying, hey, I welcome and value your opinions. And then it keeps you up to date with changing attitudes perhaps that are going on in the business community. If you might bring on a new client. Now you get this existing client, you do a survey with the client, and now this new client may have different thoughts and ideas and values than some of your already existing clients. So you want to get a feel for what's going on in the community as it regards your particular line of work. And number two, you want to let them know, and a survey or a questionnaire is great at doing this, you want to let them know that you value them. And there's nothing greater than being told that you're a valued customer, right? I mean, it's paramount. And this survey or questionnaire is a very subtle way to do it. And by the way, you always ask for permission before you send it out from the client. You don't go ahead and just lay it on them.
So do you find that they're, in your case, are they open then to feedback, or do you find that, because I've always heard the opposite side, like if you send out a survey that they may tend to be a little bit more open if it's an anonymous type of feedback. You don't know exactly who it's coming from, and they may tend to be more open in their response to your
well,
question.
but see, you can't do that if you have existing clients. You can't just play hide and seek and say, okay, I'm going to lay a survey on this client. First of all, if I get something in the mail like that, wastebasket, right? And the whole point is you want them to be aware of who you're getting the survey from, because you feel comfortable.
It's not so much who you're getting it. Well, okay, so maybe we're talking about two things, but it's more that their response back to you is anonymous. You don't know exactly who it's coming from, and maybe that's
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I leave that to their choice, but I can tell you for a fact that generally speaking, I have clients who have no problem being upfront, and I kind of appreciate that. But if a client has a problem with that, then I certainly allow for that at the bottom of the page. Please provide your opinions, and you have a signature page, okay? And you can sign your name. It doesn't have your name printed underneath there. It doesn't identify you. But I have a blank space for a signature in case they want to sign it. And I've never had one, candidly, I've never had one come back that was unsigned.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I like that approach better, because then ultimately, if you really do have a real good feedback from an existing client, you can ultimately use that as a great testimonial.
Yeah, no, great, and that's true. And also, you want to make sure your client may say to you, "Hey, these are my needs," and he or she wants to put their name down, whereas another client may have different needs than this other person. But generally speaking, when you take the vast majority of them together, excuse me, those two things I mentioned were primary in my field, a quick turnaround and flexibility in fees. But, people know, getting right into what you're just talking about, Rick, people know their opinions count. They like to know, I guess I should say, that their opinions count. If they think that you care about what they feel, they're going to respond very positively toward your business. They're going to say, look, this guy really cares what I think. And how many people, we all know, and you know this from a marketing perspective, what's the best way to get information? Sit there and shut up and let your client talk, right?
That's right.
Let the person go on and on, because they love to talk about themselves, and you're going to gain information from that. If you're doing all the talking, why would somebody want to necessarily sign up with you? Your ego is going to get in the way. You want to let their ego take over. Okay? So I think that's an important feature, and sometimes one that we tend to forget. Remember, people like to talk about themselves, and if you let them do that, they're going to say, "Hey, this guy is cool. He cares about what I think." Now, what happens if you have a problem with a client? If something arises that causes you some distress, well, we've all heard the phrase "stay calm," right? But I think what we don't typically do is graciously acknowledge that there's a problem, and then empathize with the client. In other words, we go in attack mode, right? And we get defensive. Wait a minute. That's not the way I do business. I'd never told my employee to do that. No, that's not the way to do it. You have to treat your clients with respect. You have to make sure that you make them aware of your options. So what are we talking about? Communication. It's a two-way street. And if you argue or get nasty with a client who's dissatisfied, that's a one-way street. And we don't want to go down a one-way street, right? That's going against the stops. That's going against the sign. So we want to be able to have a two-way line of communication. You only accomplish that with respect and with showing customers that you care, providing them with certain options. Remember, when you provide a client or a customer with an option, you're not saying you're right and I'm wrong. You're just acknowledging there's a problem. So what are we talking about? We emphasize the resolution of the problem as opposed to emphasizing who created the problem, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point.
Well, we're at a certain spot right now, and it does no good to try to lay blame, right? So we want to resolve the problem. We want to take the emotion out of it. We want to think logically. We want to provide them with respect and with options. Respect and options. I keep saying that. Respect, empathize with the client, listen to their problem, let them do the talking. They appreciate you in regard to that. And then you want to give them the options that might cure the problem. Now, if you run into a brick wall and none of the options do any good, well, I'm not saying this is a panacea for every single issue you may have with a client, but you're doing yourself a great disservice if you don't at least try these methods. Employ these methods that are sound and reasonable and are going to get you to keep an existing client, because it's cost effective to retain loyal clients rather than consistently go out and try to get new ones. And again, we all know about marketing, and we talk about it on this show all the time, Rick. It is very, very important, and it's important to go out and get new clients. But it's cost effective to maintain the existing clients. It does no good, right, to go out and get new clients if you're just, running them through the mill. Okay, I've got 2 today, and I've lost 2 today. I've got 3 today, and I lost 3 today. That does nobody any good, right?
Yeah, exactly. And what you're saying basically is sometimes it's okay. You may have to swallow a little ego, a little pride, and just be on the receiving end for a little bit, because sometimes the client will be very emotional and may not approach it with the same type of patience or ability to listen, like yourself, right?
Right. And so what does this all come down to? Attitude. Your attitude. It starts with you. And if you're going to take the attitude of being combative versus the attitude of you're important to me, let me hear what you have to say, well, then you're going to lose clients. Because remember, in today's society, it doesn't take much, and you know all the websites better than I do, Rick, where people go and complain. I mean, you get a product an hour later than you're supposed to. Bingo, there's a complaint on the website that it's an untimely delivery. It doesn't take much for somebody to complain about what you do, meaning that it's not necessarily relevant at all whether you did something wrong. The point is, people can complain whether you did something wrong or not. And that takes me back to the point I made earlier. Why not try to resolve the problem now instead of trying to lay blame as to whose fault it was that created the problem? This happens all the time in business. It happens everywhere you turn, and it does no one any good to be combative and to take the defensive. So your attitude is really going to be important in maintaining that cost-effective method of retaining clients. And that's a lot of what we're talking about on this show today. We're talking about how to be cost-effective and make your business prosper by implementing a good relationship with your existing customers, which may or may not tie into the type of marketing you're doing or the type of business entity you have or all that good stuff. But you must have patience, Because when dealing with this stuff, you may have an employee who caused the problem, not you, right? Now what do you do? I think it's important in that situation for you to address the problem personally and not let the now if you have an employee for 20 years working with you and he's well respected and you trust him with your business and he's a manager and all that stuff, well, that may pose a different issue. That's something you'll have to judge. But if you're a small entrepreneur and you have an employee who's doing some tasks around the office for you and that employee happens to create a problem, I think it's important for you to pick up the ball and address it with the client personally.
And maybe you find this. I know in a few situations, I've had to deal with this. A lot of times the client will actually come up with their own solutions that you already know in the back of your head. They'll come up with them themselves in this venting process, right?
Yeah, and why is that? Because you're allowing them to express their views. You're showing them that they're important to you, and they're in return acknowledging, hey, you know what? I feel like I can communicate with this guy because he or she is letting me voice my opinion. So I'm not going to be shy. I'm going to let him know, but I'm going to in turn be respectful. Remember, respect promotes respect. If you're in a fighting mode, what are you going to get back in return?
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, that's a boxing match, and that's what we don't want. But here's another important point I think is very interesting. But how many times do you see this? Oh, I mean, I see it all the time. An email or a communication on the phone. Do you have any idea what the reflection in your voice on a phone call can be, or an email without the proper context can be to a client or a customer? Okay, I'm on the phone with you. Yeah, Rick, I understand you have an issue. How can I help resolve this issue today? Yeah, Rick, my employee Joe told me you got a problem. Okay, well, what can I do to resolve it? I mean, your phone, your voice, your inflection can show respect or disrespect. Likewise, in an email, take the time to write an email to your client and make sure that the context is clearly expressed in the email. Because many times you can get an email that sounds rude and the person on the other end never meant to be rude. It's just the way it read, and because you don't have the context or the ability to hear or see that person, it's taken out of context. So take the extra time to be very clear in your email, and if you have to be apologetic and say, this email is not meant to be sarcastic or whatever it might be, take the time to put that in there. And then thirdly, in addition to voice inflection and email context, make sure that you, if it's a face-to-face meeting, don't have these wild gyrations. Your body image, right, and your gestures and your posture and your expressions, your facial expressions. Could you imagine looking somebody in the eye and saying, "Absolutely, Rick, I'll take care of your problem," or looking at somebody going, "Yeah, all right, yeah, I'll take care of your problem. Yeah, I'll take care of it for you." Yeah, I mean, some of this sounds, kind of basic, right? But you have to remember, in a context like this, many times, because of that emotion, you lose the ability to think rationally and to employ these very basic concepts. So that's why you take this syringe, you extract the emotion, you now operate with a clear thought process, and you say, how do I deal with this person? The first thing I'm going to do is forget about who's right and who's wrong. What I want to do is retain this client. How am I going to do it? Well, I'm going to do it by resolving the problem in a polite way, not by yelling and screaming and saying that he's the one who caused the problem.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
and even in a face-to-face meeting, if you're meeting somebody in the office, I think you'd agree with this. These things right here can be a kiss of death and very anti-productive the phone's going off, your email chime is going off. Turn all those electronics off and totally focus on that person that wants to have this discussion with you.
Sure, and you've seen that here on the show. Many times my phone will ring because I will have forgotten to turn it off. I mean, I know that's not exactly what you're talking about, but the point is, you got to remember these things. You got to remember to not be distracted and to focus in on what you're doing. And typically, Rick, I get the ultimate question, well, after exerting all reasonable efforts, you finally have somebody that just doesn't want to listen, doesn't want to be reasonable. Well, your business is better off letting that client go. Okay, but I'll bet you this, that you would have seen that coming. This is not a client who's going to leave you in an instant over one issue. This is a client that you will have had periodic issues with or problems with. And finally, this client, because of that client's ability to act reasonably and resolve an issue as opposed to blaming you, that client's it's not going to be worth retaining that sort of a client. So remember, while you're doing these things, your goal is to extract that emotion, act reasonably, be respectful, show patience, and let your client come forth and tell you what the issues are. But you have to bank on the fact that that client is going to appreciate that and wants to resolve the issue too. You may from time to time get the client that even in the face of all that reasonableness is just going to smack you in the face, and that's the time when you say to that client, you're better off finding somebody else. You're better off finding somebody else to take care of your business needs. So
now, do you find that the same psychology would apply to an employee?
Sure. Nobody likes to be disrespected and yelled at. There are ways to get your point across. Sometimes with employees, though, because of employment reviews and keeping an employment file on an employee, you do have to reprimand them. And when I say reprimand, I mean assign fault. You're going to have to do that at times. But that doesn't mean that you can't focus on the positive and say, we have this problem and I think it can be resolved, and here's how I would propose resolving it. And moreover, even when you do assign fault, same thing. Are you going to stand there and scream and yell at the person, or talk rationally to them, take the emotion out of the conversation, and explain what your thinking process is? In other words, be respectful. Remember, when somebody does something wrong, whether it's a client or an employee, there's nothing in any book that I've ever read that says that going hand in hand with discussing those issues, you have to be disrespectful. You can always maintain that modicum of respect. And remember, you're dealing with human behavior. So it's an anomaly that requires you to be devoid of emotion and clear logical thinking, as we've been saying throughout the show. Why? Because you never know when you're dealing with human beings what you're going to get. Human behavior is not predictable unless you are a psychologist or a psychiatrist and you're dealing with somebody on a consistent basis. Even a psychiatrist or a psychologist put in a one-time scenario might be able to figure out what issues are going on before you can, but not immediately. So you never know when you're dealing with human behavior what you're going to get. That should be the be-all and end-all of this show. You never know in dealing with clients or customers what you're going to get in terms of human behavior and their response to whatever you do, whether it's right or wrong. What do you do in that situation? Extract emotion, employ clear logical thinking. That's what you have to do. And of course, there's one other thing you have to do, Rick. Make sure this doesn't happen again in the future, right?
That's right.
So that means on your end, if you suspect or if you know in your heart that this is a problem that was caused by you, take steps to correct that problem, right? And don't take criticism from your clients or customers personally, okay? So I want to kind of toward the end of the show here, point this out. Why do most people, and think about this in your own context, if you're the entrepreneur being told by a client or customer that something has gone afoul, what makes us act emotionally and what makes us be discourteous probably 8 or 9 times out of 10?
Well, the client who's I guess in an example that I would think of, that you've hurt their ego, right? You've bruised them in some way.
No, but you're on the total opposite end of the spectrum, but I'm glad you are, because it points out what I'm about to say. It's because they made a mistake and they want somebody else to blame, right? When many times when we screw up, we're looking for, if that guy didn't, if he wasn't going 70 miles an hour and run a stop sign, I wouldn't have been hit by the car. It doesn't matter that I was camping out in the middle of the street all night. That guy was going 70 miles an hour and ran a stop sign. Well, that's an extreme example, but the point is, many times when a mistake is made, we're looking for somebody else to blame, and clients and customers are no different. So what do you want to do? You want to, again, not focus on the cause, but focus on the resolution of the problem. How can I help you? How can I make this right? And when you say, how can you make this right? You're not saying, how can I cover for my screw up? You're saying, how can we make this problem, which we now both have, regardless of who caused it, we both have this problem. How do we make it right?
And more importantly, how do we make this right together, right?
That's right. Because remember, going hand in hand with this is, you never know, right, what's going on in somebody's personal life. You don't know what's made them upset. Let's say you have an issue with a client or customer. Maybe this is something that is not a big deal, but it is a big deal today because it's salt in an open wound because of an argument he or she just had with the wife or husband at home, right? Now the person is seething, and they come in and they see this paper that should have been signed by you yesterday. And typically you write an email and say, sorry, Joe, I really meant to get to that yesterday, but I'll get to it today. I'll have it signed and send over to you, and then we can complete our deal. Now you're picking up the phone screaming at Joe, or screaming at the client or customer, or vice versa, because this document wasn't signed 24 hours earlier. And that's because you're ticked off about something that happened at home. I want to end the show by saying, dare I say this, but I do not typically watch evangelists on TV. But I remember one Sunday morning, I was turning on Meet the Press. And as I was flicking through the channels, it was about 10 minutes before the program, I saw this evangelist on, who will remain nameless. And, I clicked on him, and he just happened to be talking about an issue involving joy. And he was saying, don't let people rob you of your joy. And he was talking about this very issue where people put you in a position to get you upset, even though it may very well have been something that's their fault. And because you get upset, they rob you of your joy, of your ability to feel good about yourself and to feel good in general. Don't let people rob you of your joy. I think it's very apropos here. Take the emotion out of it, concentrate on resolving the problem, not on whose fault it is. Don't let their anger or their mistake, if you will, or their feelings of frustration put you in that same position. And if you do that, your business is going to prosper. Why? Because you're going to hold on to existing customers for the most part. And that's a big part of making your business grow, right? Because remember, we always think, Rick, about businesses growing by getting new clients and doing great marketing, getting new clients. Sure, that's the case. But your business isn't growing if you're losing clients and then picking up new ones at the same rate, right? Mm-hmm. That's not growing your business.
Right. That's right.
So that's why these issues are so important for your business.
Yeah, and I think if you practice these or learn how to practice these, like Bill has recommended, some of your best clients could come from these problems if you collaboratively solve them as a team. And right?
Yeah, because they're going to be more now. They're going to be even more loyal to you. Oh, this guy cares about what I think. This guy resolved my problems without poking his finger in my face and saying it's all your fault. You know, that may sound mundane, but believe me, the human psyche plays a tremendous role in your relationships with your clients and customers. Because if you never know what you're going to get in terms of a reaction, remember, that means you don't know what's going on inside their head. So you take the high road, you always be respectful and devoid of emotion. And that way, whatever you get in return that's nasty, you know you've done everything you can to make it unnasty and that this person is just unmanageable. And that's the time when you say, okay, better hit the road, Jack. You're better off finding somebody else. That's a lot different than having a client who's a good client and has a problem and you just tell them to hit the road right away because I'm not dealing with this crap, No, you don't do it that way. So in any event, I think that's where we want to go for the show today. I hope people got some value out of this because I think it's very, very important and it's part of a very, very big part of my training as a lawyer. And I don't think it's something that should be relegated to an attorney. I think it should be every business owner should know how to do this and should put it into practice because I guarantee at some point in time he or she is going to have an experience where they have a client who's upset at the most minute issue or a big issue. Doesn't matter. Whatever it is, you handle it the same way. How can I make it right? Not whose fault it is.
That's right. And one of the things that I've learned over the time that I've known you, Bill, is that you have an innate ability to put the emotion aside, and look at this from a logical standpoint. And I've learned a lot from you just observing you in just a few situations where you're able to do that, and kind of puts me at a different mindset that, yeah, you're right. I was injecting my own personal beliefs and some of my emotions into it, where it started clouding up the situation a little bit, and I pulled back and was able to step back in and make a better decision on how to deal that situation.
Yeah, well, thank you, Rick. I appreciate you saying that. But one of the easiest ways for me to get into this situation and have to practice what I preach is, I'm a watch collector. I get a watch in the mail that's damaged or not what I hoped it would be. It's real easy to pick up the phone and start getting nasty, but I have to continually remind myself, what am I going to get better customer service if I call them up and I'm real nice to them and explain the issue? Am I going to get better service doing that than I am saying, hey, you sent me this thing, the box was all ripped up. What kind of a quality control do you have over there? You gotta remember to do that. It's not always that easy if you don't have it at your disposal and don't think about it and consciously adapt it as part of your business acumen. So in any event, before we close the show, I wanted to get back to saying what we talked about last week. The Bottle Business Sense show has some very exciting news here in the next few weeks that we're going to talk about. We're not ready to release it yet, but it's going to be very exciting for our viewers and listeners. We know you're going to like it when you hear about it. We're just tidying up some loose ends right now, and so that's why we're not discussing it at the moment. But we do have some great things that are coming in the show that are going to show you why this is a continually developing show. It's growing and it's getting it's going to branch off in a lot of different directions that we feel are going to be helpful for the business owner and the entrepreneur. Right, Rick?
Oh, absolutely. And you're right. I mean, this is an evolving show. When we first started, we had some very very, very focused goals on what we wanted to do to the business owner. But as the feedback has come back from our listeners and viewers out there, we found the need to when provide them even more value. So I think you're going to be excited when when it comes time to releasing the information. So
I agree. So before I leave you, when are you returning to home base?
I am flying back this weekend.
Okay.
I'll be back in California over the weekend, and then our next show, obviously, I'll be back in the office. I think I'll be a little jealous because I'm only coming halfway. I should be coming all the way across around half the globe to come and meet you, right?
That's right. You should be doing that. You pack up the family, and head on out, and we'll go out. Hey, listen, they have a place here that's got the most. I know it's going to sound funny because Hawaii has so many other great things. They got the most unbelievable onion rings you have ever had in your life in this place. I mean to tell you, you need to go into Jack LaLanne's gym for about 2 weeks after, eating those things.
Awesome. I got to tell you before we sign off here, I had a little bit of a taste of some Hawaiian cuisine, kind of, in the form of we had this big, huge pig roast for this family reunion that we had out here, and it was just fantastic. It reminded me a lot of, as a kid growing up here, we did this every year, but in my time over in the islands, tasting the cuisine over there and having the Kahlua pig and all that, it brought me back to two of my favorite places.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I understand. Well, before we sign off, Rick, people can get a hold of me at wfblegalconsulting.com. Bill at wfblegalconsulting.com is my email. My phone number is 949-413-6535 or 949-698-6222. That's 6222. Rick, where can we get a hold of R2, and also what are the ways they can get a hold of us on the web through Bottle Business Sense Show?
Well, you can get a hold of me directly at rickandscoso@gmail.com or rick at r2visualstudios.com, 949-667-1182. So if any marketing questions, certainly throw them my way. Legal questions, throw them Bill's way. And as always, every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, we broadcast here in simulcast on our website at bottlebusinesssenseshow.com. You can also listen to the audio version on the site or on Blog Talk Radio at blogtalkradio.com/Bottled Business Sense Show. So, Bill, great episode today. It's a little different spin on the legal topics that you usually talk about, but certainly a very, very valuable lesson in the topic of how silence is gold. Right?
Yeah, and retaining existing customers. It's a big part of your business. You can't grow your business if you're losing customers at the same time you're getting new ones. If you're losing existing customers. Anyway, a great show. Thank you, Rick. I agree. We're looking forward to coming back next week. So everybody have a prosperous week. Go out there and get them. Be nice to your customers and clients, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone. Aloha, Bill.
Okay.